Hi, today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the financial elements of the beef production industry in North America. I'm going to start by looking at some of the historical things that have happened, historical profitability, and then I'm going to move into some of the cost of production things. All the way through that, I'm going to be emphasizing some of the important aspects of making management decisions that drive us towards efficiency. So the first slide you're going to see is a slide done by the Agri-Profits group, and they published a paper on profitability in the beef industry representing about 22 years. This is a study that was done in Alberta. They went back as far as 1995, and then they came as far ahead as 2016. And just by way of explanation, the blue bar is the revenue bar. The green bar is the total costs, and the difference between the two is represented in the red bar. So any bar that protrudes below the baseline, that represents a loss. Any bar that is above the baseline represents a profit. So you can see here that over the years, there's about as many profit years as there are loss years. And between 2010 and 2015, the beef industry in Western Canada, Alberta in particular, was in pretty good shape. So the other thing that we can notice here, there is a cycle in beef production, and that's not unusual when we look at an industry that is supply-demand driven. When demand for product, high value product, high nutrition product like beef comes along, then it puts a draw on the supply, and then supply grows, and as supply grows, the demand lowers, it meets the demand, and then we have excess product, and so we go back down into a low profit time period. So the second slide that I have for you is slide that looks at the variation in the cost of production in dollars per cow wintered. This was done by the Western Beef Development Center from the year 2001 to 2012, and it segregates out the top 25% out of this data. So we have represented here a line which is the average cost for wintering a cow in Western Canada. And then we have a line down here that I have highlighted, represents the top 25% and their cost. So by comparison, we can see that there's about $130 difference between the top 25 and the average of the group. It narrows to about $100 and then broadens again back to about $120, $130 difference. So that difference is going to be an interesting one. I'm going to point it out a little bit later. Again, this is the Canadian situation. So let's take a little bit of a look at the American situation, and we have a Kansas State study here that looks at the very same thing that was looked at in Canada, profitability over a period of time. This one happens to be from 1975 to 2016, and representing 40 years. And what I've highlighted is the profit years, and anything protruding below the baseline is a loss year. So we can see that for the average producer in the beef industry, there were 6 years out of 40 where there was a clear profit. And so not quite the performance that we're seeing in Canada, but a similar trend. Again, you can see the cycle down here. It's just a little bit more exaggerated because of the losses. So digging into the cost of production, I'm using a template that's available on the Manitoba Agriculture website in livestock costs, and it has a very detailed breakdown of all the costs, and also produces some visuals. I like this one. It lets me see very, very quickly where the main areas are that I need to focus on. This one happens to be feed, representing 33% of the cost. This one represents other operating costs at 43%. So between these two, we have 76% of the cost of production. Then we add the last and very important section, labor, $176 per cow. That was in 2019. And I put in figures that were reasonable for Saskatchewan. And between these three, we've covered 90% of the costs. So anything we can do to improve these three areas, we're going to improve the profitability of the beef farm. Let's take a look now a little more detail in the United States. This is a study I particularly like. It's from Kansas State, and it is return over total costs from the year 2010 to the year 2014. And producers contributed their records, and so we know we're working with real farm data when we look at these numbers. I'd like to take a look first of all at number of calves sold on a per cow basis in the herd. We have an average column here. We have the high profit group, middle profit group, and low profit group represented here, and then with the difference listed on the end. So let's take a look at calves sold. The key production indicator for that says we want 1 calf from every cow every year, and the high product group 0.924, getting pretty close. The middle group 0.89, and the low profit group 0.904. So the difference between the highest and the lowest profit groups is 0.02 or 2%. It doesn't seem like much, but you'll see as we go along it contributes to the gross income. So let's take a look then at the weight of the calves. Is there a difference between the management decisions that the high profit group is making compared to the low profit group? So the weight, 628 pounds for the high profit group, 607 for the middle group, 598 for the low profit group, representing 30-pound difference, which is 5%. So now we have 2% more calves, we have 5% more weight. Let's take a look at price. Are these calves more desirable in the eyes of the purchaser? The high profit group got $145, the middle $141, and the low group $143, for a difference of $1.90 per hundredweight, which is a 1% difference. So adding up all those differences, let's take a look at gross income. $989 for the high profit group, $855 for the low profit group, for a difference of $133 or 16%. So these small little differences all add up once we start looking at gross income. Now, there is a category that's really important to us, and we want to take a look at that feed, because we know that represents 30 to 40% of the cost of operating. So the high third group, high profit group, looks at $281 cost in feed per cow. The low profit group, $412, and that totals $131 difference. That $130 is a very similar number to what we saw for the top 25%, the difference between the top 25% and the average in Canada. So whether you're in Canada or whether you're in the United States, there's a group of producers that are making those kind of decisions with a 32% difference, and are profiting almost every year. When we come right down to the bottom, when we look at the net return to management, the high profit group, and this was in a time period, we should remember, 2010 to 2014, where most of those years were losses for the average person, they made $81.62 per cow every year of that time period. The low profit group lost $333 per cow over that whole time period. So it's really important then that we focus on the little things that make a big difference once we come to the gross income. Digging into these differences using the Manitoba Agriculture cost of production template, and I should say there's lots of different templates available. Check with your local extension people, and they can help you out with that. But we're looking at then capturing these kind of numbers in order to be able to do this calculation. We need to get grain and concentrates, we need to get forages, we need to get salts and minerals, and we need to get extended grazing. Now, one of the interesting things I found out about the extended grazing was I talked to the economist, one of the economists who put together that first slide for agri-profits, and she said that she noticed two areas where costs had gone up significantly. Feed costs had increased 50%, and grazing costs had increased 100%. And the reason that grazing had increased so much was that grazing corn had come in. So we have an increased cost, and we want to be sure that we're getting an increased value for that. So that's something that a manager has to look at. It's okay to spend a little extra money if we're getting a good return for it. So this represents 33%. Now let's look down into this category here. This is the other operating costs, 43%. And things like herd replacement, death loss, even straw, veterinary medicine, all of these things down here, they're things that we're engaged in on a daily basis on the farm. But we need to remember to capture those costs. What does the actual cow weigh? What do the bales weigh? And is the ration that we're designing the ration that the cows are eating? So those are important considerations. One of the other aspects that I like on this spreadsheet is the ability to take a look at different diets in here using common available feed ingredients. By doing this, it lets me forecast which diet is going to give me the best price on a per cow basis. Ration 1 is giving us $3.14 a day during the gestation period, and ration 9 is giving us $1.34 a day. That's a big difference. All of these diets meet the nutritional requirements of that animal. So in evaluating our animals and what options we have, we should remember that we can make those decisions. We don't have to feed hay. If we have extra hay, we could sell it. We could feed residues from crops mixed with grain. That depends, of course, on grain being available and grain being cheap. So